Test one. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for coming, and I apologize for this delay. We're gonna have a talk, but first we're going to do some inshad first in Arabic, mostly from the tariqa Shadiliya and Qadiriya, and also some Ottoman Turkish ones from the Khalwati Jirahi tariqa. Would you like to introduce the poems a little bit?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. First, let me introduce myself. I am Samih from Palestine. I was born and raised in Syria, so I'm half Palestinian, half Syrian. What we will do today is some inshad, reading poems from the Qadiri tariqa, as Ibrahim said, that we follow in Damascus mostly. And then we will follow up with some Turkish Ottoman music also. So I hope you enjoy it.
We were supposed to have an oud player. He's parking his car, so hopefully he rolls up by the time. By the time we reach the Ottoman Turkish ones. Yes.
Nuruddin, come. Assalamu alaikum. Are you Isa?
Yes. Is my voice clear? Okay.
Allah. Bismillah. Yes, sit down. حب النبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. حب النبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. وعمدتي في كل حين دوما فإني لا أضام. فالشمس بعض من ضياه والبدر نوع من ثناه. والشمس بعض من ضياه والبدر نوع من ثناه. والكل في معناه تاه. لم يدركوا ذاك المقام. حب النبي يا نبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. وعمدتي في كل حين يا عين دوما فإني لا أضام. يا آل البيت حسبنا عليكم. يا رجال الله أرق لديكم. يا آل البيت حسبنا عليكم. رجال الله أرق لديكم. لاحظونا برمش عينيكم. نحن لخدامكم خدام. حب النبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. حب النبي والآل ديني ومذهبي حقا ويقيني. وعمدتي في كل حين يا عين دوما فإني لا أضام. واشرب شراب أهل الصفاء. الله الله ترى العجائب مع رجال المعرفة. الله والوقت طيب لقد أنا شيء عجيب. الله الله لمن رآني أنا المحب والحبيب. الله الله ما ثم ثاني يا قصيدا عين الخبر. الله الله غطاه غينك. ارجع لذاتك واعتبر. الله الله ما ثم غيرك فالخبر منك والخبر. الله الله والسر عندك والسر عندك وأنت مرآة النظر. الله الله عين العيان عين العيان اشرب شراب أهل الصفا. الله الله ترى العجائب ترى العجائب مع رجال المعرفة. الله والوقت طيب والوقت طيب انظر جمالي شاهدا. الله الله في كل إنسان في كل إنسان كالماء يجري جاريا. الله الله في أصل الأغصان في أصل الأغصان يسقى بماء واحد. الله الله والزهر ألوان والزهر ألوان فاسجد لهيبة ذي الجلال. الله الله عند التداني عند التداني ولتقرأ آيات الكمال. الله الله عند سبعا مثاني سبعا مثاني اشرب شراب أهل الصفا. الله الله ترى العجائب ترى العجائب مع رجال المعرفة. يا نسيم الورد خبر للرشا لم يزدني الورد إلا عطشا. يا نسيم الورد خبر للرشا لم يزدني الورد إلا عطشا. لحبيب حبه حشو الحشاء إن يشاء يمشي على خد مشاء. لحبيب حبه حشو الحشاء إن يشاء يمشي على خد مشاء. روحه روحي وروحي روحه إن عشا قلت وإن شئت يشاء. روحه روحي وروحي روحه إن يشاء شئت وإن شئت يشاء. شهر الربيع وافانا أغدى العين بقدومه نلنا القبول بقدومه نلنا القبول. سبحان من قد أعطانا سبحان من قد أعطانا. شهر الربيع وافانا أقبل علينا ونانا به أتانا رسول الله به أتانا حبيب الله. للدين حقا أهدانا للدين حقا أهدانا. شهر به نلنا الهدى وبه انجلى عنا الردى. شهر به نلنا الهدى وبه انجلى عنا الردى. بجماله لما بدا بجماله لما بدا من كل كل خطب نجانا، من كل خطب نجانا. شهر الربيع وافانا، أقبل علينا علينا وهنانا. الربيع وافانا، أقبل علينا وهنانا. بيتنا رسول الله، بيتنا حبيب الله، بالدين حقا أهدانا، للدين حقا أهدانا. ويا إمام الرسل يا سندي، أنت باب الله معتمدي. يا إمام الرسل يا سندي، أنت باب الله معتمدي. فبدنياي وآخرتي يا رسول الله خذ بيدي. وما رأت عين وليس ترى مثل طه في الورى بشرا. خير من فوق السماء سرى، خير الأخلاق والشيم. يا إمام الرسل يا سندي، أنت باب الله معتمدي. فبدنياي وآخرتي يا رسول الله أنبض عبد الله يا أملي، يا ملاذ الخائف الوجل. نظرة يا أكرم الرسل، وبغوث حلل حلل عقدي. يا إمام الرسل يا سندي، أنت باب الله معتمدي. فبدنياي وآخرتي يا رسول الله خذ بيدي. لما سقاني ساقي القوم بالخمر طابت أنفاسي. لما سقاني ساقي القوم بالخمر طابت أنفاسي. وسقنا حامي جيلان وما علينا من باسي. يبزو يا عبد القادر يا أيها البحر الزاخر. أدرك أغثنا يا سلطان من شدة الوقت العاثر. الكأس نور يولالي من يد شيخ الرجال. وشيخنا عين الأعيان وموصل للعوالي. بمدحه صاحي غني ومن يلم فليلمني. ولو بعذلي أطال فمدحه أضحى فني. فمدحه أضحى فني. الله الله أغثنا يا رسول الله، يا عريض الجاه عليك صلوات الله. الله 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 أغثنا يا رسول الله يا عريض الجاه عليك صلوات الله أنت المختار بمدحك تجلى الأكدار ينجو من النار ومحبك يا رسول الله 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 يا رسول الله يا عريض الجاه عليك صلوات الله أنت الحبيب بذكرك قلبي يطيب أنت الحبيب بذكرك قلبي يطيب حاشا يخيب محبك رسول الله 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 أغثنا يا رسول الله يا عريض الجاه عليك صلوات الله صاحب الحضراء أكرمنا منك بنظرة صاحب الحضراء أكرمنا منك بنظرة يا أبا الزهراء والقاسم وعبد الله 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 أغثنا يا رسول الله يا عريض الجاه عليك صلوات الله 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 أغثنا يا رسول الله يا عريض الجاه عليك صلوات الله أنواره تعلو للقبة الخضراء امتد وتجل من ظلمات الأحشاء في الليل إذ تبدو لعين كل راء شعاعها يبدو من كوكب الزهراء بالسر والجهر صل على نور الأعيان بالخير والجهر نبينا علي الشان يا حبيبا إلى الله كن شفيعي عند الله يا حبيبا إلى الله كن شفيعي عند الله يا أبا الزهراء المداد الله 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 يا رب اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الله إن نلت يا ريح الصبا يوما إلى الأرض الحرام إن نلت يا ريح الصبا يوما إلى الأرض الحرام بلغ سلامي روضة فيها النبي المحترم يا ربي أشكن فربانا أفنديم يا ربي أشكن فربانا أفندم هوديايم الله الله دونه دونه أشكن إليه يانا يانا أفندم أشكن إليه يانا أفندم هوديايم الله الله دونه دونه çağa düştüm Yusuf gibi efendim çağa düştüm Yusuf gibi efendim derde Let's start it together. Bismillah. Yarı gördüm, şükür elhamdülillah. Bu gece yarı dürdüm, şükür elhamdülillah. Ayağına yüz sürdüm, şükür elhamdülillah. Allah ayağına yüz sürdüm, şükür elhamdülillah. La armağan verdi, dilimden düşmez virdi. Ayağından verdi, dilimden düşmez virdi. Gönül murada erdi, şükür elhamdülillah. Allah gönül murada etti, şükür elhamdülillah. La ilahe illallah, la ilahe illallah, la ilahe illallah, la ilahe illallah. Muhammed Resulullah, aleyhi salatullah. Elif lam beni bilin diye tesbihi var elinde. Elif lam ben belinde, tesbihi var elinde. Gönül aşkın selinde, şükür elhamdülillah. Allah gönül aşkın selinde, şükür elhamdülillah. La ilahe illallah, la ilahe illallah, la ilahe illallah, la ilahe illallah. Muhammed Resulullah, aleyhi salatullah. Pirim efendim benim, fedadar canı temin. Pirim efendim benim, fedadar canı tenim. Azad olmaz bendenim, şükür elhamdülillah. Güzel aşık cevrimizi çekemezsin demedim mi? Bu bir rıza lokmasıdır, yiyemezsin demedim mi? Demedim mi, demedim mi? Gönül ona söylemedim mi? Demedim mi, demedim mi? Gönül sana söylemedim mi? Bu bir rıza lokmasıdır, yiyemezsin
eylemedim mi? Yeminler kollarını açar, gözlerinden nar açar. Yeminler kalır açar, gözlerin kanlar saçar. Bu bir demdir gelenler, yalan söylemindi. Oh my God. Bismillah. Bismillah.
Nice feryat edip zarı kılan ben.
Nice feryat edip zarı kılan ben, nice bu aşk oduna yakılan ben, nice bu aşk oduna yakalım ben. Ya hay ya hay, ya hay ya hay, ya hay ya hay. Ölümden korkmazsan bir hey yarenler, ölümden korkmazsan be hey yarenler. Budur korkum yardan ki ayrılam ben, budur korkum yardan ki ayrılım ben. Ya hay ya hay, ya hay ya hay, hay ya hay. Ey ya Leyla sıfat senin elinden, ey ya Leyla sıfat senin elinden. Vara Mecnun gibi da düşem ben, vara Mecnun gibi da düşem ben. Ya hay ya hay, ya hay ya hay, ya hay ya hay. Yunus eydür senin aşkın yolunda, Yunus eydür senin aşkın yolunda. Vara Mansur gibi berdar olam ben, vara Mansur gibi berdar olam ben. Ya hay ya hay, ya hay ya hay, ya hay ya hay. Allah Allah Rabbuna ya men ayni sadiri, Sultan kullul evliya Şeyh Abdul Kadiri. Allah Allah Rabbuna ya men ayni sadiri, Sultan kullul evliya Şeyh Abdul Kadiri. Ya hay ya hay, hay ya hay, ya hay ya hay. Hüseyni, want to do them together? Yeah. Bismillah. Severim sen beni candan içer o, severim sen beni candan içer o. Yolum vardır bu erkandan itişer o, yolun vardır be şeriat, tarikat yoldur varana. Şeriat, tarikat yoldur varana. Hakikat
Yunus'un sözleri hundur ateştir. Yunus'un sözleri hundur ateştir. Kapında kul var sultan içer o. Kapında kul var sultandan içer o. Affet isyanım benim, halim yaman Allah'ım. Affet isyanım benim, halim yaman Allah'ım. Ref'et nisyanım benim, medet aman Allah'ım. Halim yaman sultanım. Defterim dolu siyah, amelim tekmil günah. Defterim dolu siyah, alelim tekmil günah. Sensin kuluna penah, aned aman Allah'ım. Alim yaman sultanın. Ümmet et Habibine, gönüller tabibine. Ümmet et Habibine, günlerler tabibine. Rahmeyle garibine, medet aman Allah'ım. Alim yaman sultanım. Ay azad eyle, cemalinle şad eyle. Aşkı azad eyle, cemalinle şad eyle. Külüm neye yad eyle, aded alan Allah'ım. Alim yaman sultanım. Allahümme salli ala seyyidina Muhammed ve ala aleyhi. نجم مجد بدا بطالع السعد. نجم مجد بدا بطالع السعد. فاستوى الليل والنهار بوقدي. نجم مجد بدا بطالع السعد. فاستوى الليل والنهار بوقدي. هل علمتم ما ليلة القدر عندي؟ هي ليلة المولد الذي كان للدين سرورا بيومه وازدهاء. حيث جبريل في السماوات مجد يعلن البشرى بولادة أحمد. سمعت أمه أن أبشري بمحمد. وتوالت بشرى الهواتف أن قد ولد المصطفى وحق الهنا. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد عدد فضلك ورضا نفسك وزنة عرشك ومداد كلماتك كلما ذكرك الذاكرون وغفل عن ذكرك الغافلون.
Okay, I'll just use it. That was some brief inshad, which we unfortunately protracted a little bit too long because I'm going to have to actually give the talk now. I hope there's enough time. Before we start, I'd like to thank Aban Kamarul for playing the duff for us. He was very kind to offer some assistance. And yes. So, thank you all for coming. I'm Sayyid Ibrahim Al-Mahdali. Perhaps you may know me as Zaid's brother. I got some laughs there. Which brother, yeah. You've probably never seen me before because I have not been in this country for a number of years now, but you may see the resemblance. If you read the poster, I mean, that was quite difficult to kind of actually write down something as the bio. I'm a historian in training. Let's kind of cushion that a little bit. And my primary interests are material culture, institutional history, this sort of stuff. And for a number of years now, I've been quite interested, in particular, when it comes to material culture, the topic of textiles, both the manufacturing. Sorry, is my voice clear? Yeah. A little bit closer. Okay. Sorry, my throat is, because the Turkish ones, you know, they go real deep. And I became quite interested in textiles in my research. It's a kind of gargantuan topic to be talking about, and we don't have that much time to kind of go through all of it. And so I will kind of point out why I consider this topic to be important, particularly for this day and age. The topic of clothing and attire and all these sorts of stuff, it's a very loaded thing. It may seem to be a little bit, a sort of irrelevant topic, or perhaps only on the matter of luxuries and extra elements in culture, but it's actually quite central. And you can see it's a nexus point of a lot of where our civilization currently is. So, like this close. So we live in a time of fast fashion, polyester running rampant on the clothes that we wear and all this sorts of stuff. And my studies in the material cultures of the Islamicate civilization, Dar al-Islam in general, it's not to say that it's Islamic per se in terms of like doctrinal and stuff, it's the space of Dar al-Islam. So from the Maghrib to Southeast Asia, from Rumeli, the Balkans, all the way to Central Asia and even all the way to China, the breadth of this geographical space contain the continuities of the previous greatness of the state of our civilization and sub-civilizations. So there's Mawara al-Nahar, Transoxania, literally translated, Central Asia, basically Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and all this sorts of stuff. perhaps it's been viral quite recently about textiles that come from there, like the chapan and the dopi and all these kind of silk weft, cotton weft and all this kind of stuff. There's also the coasts of the Mediterranean, North Africa, including Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, Bilad al-Sham, the Levant, Anatolia, Greece, which was previously part of the Ottoman Empire. This space was making and enjoying its own culture that it had inherited even prior to the Islamic era. And that is precisely why it works. And it's particularly attuned to the peoples of these regions. That is not to say that this is not a interconnected world. It was an extremely interconnected world. Oh, sorry, I don't know how long that map has been there. I'm just gonna stand. I'm just gonna stand. This is my apologies. This is a map of the Ottoman Empire, but we are not limiting our discourse here to the Ottoman Empire only. Obviously, we're very far away from this region, across the Indian Ocean and all this sorts of stuff. And its exclusion in this map is mainly just by the fact that, by way of examples, I will be showing mostly textiles from the Ottoman world. But do not be fooled, the world is larger than that. And in fact, the Indian Oceans, well, the monsoon season, the monsoon winds that carry the boats from the Indian Ocean, from Southeast Asia, from the Indian subcontinent and all this sorts of stuff, was perhaps for a number of centuries the actual source for a lot of what this part of the world consumes, let's say. Could we go to the next map, please? This was how interconnected our world was. So when it comes to textiles, the consumers and the manufacturers, handmade, mind you, would be all, all from all over the place. Like, do not think just because of the lack of modern technology, the world was not particularly globalized. I'm not using that term in its kind of vogue sense nowadays, in a global capitalist kind of way, but globalized in the sense that whatever, let's say, I mean ceramics, or textiles and all these sorts of stuff made here, they would be consumed here, let's say. Like even during the Abbasid era, I'd like to give a quite demonstrative example here. In the case of the shipwreck that was found off the coast of the Malaysian Peninsula and Singapore, it was a shipwreck that contained several ceramics and all other sorts of luxury objects that were commissioned by I believe the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad, in Mesopotamia, but was being shipped from all the way to China. So to kind of think of the timeline here, that's like the 900s, okay? Like 900s, 800s. So this was a very interconnected world. The Silk Road, the land route of the Silk Road, and the maritime Silk Road, which as part of the Malay archipelago is much more connected by way of the sea. So next slide. Once you see how these textiles were not necessarily, they're not like this far off, distant, unattainable sort of part of the high culture, and I want to emphasize that it was in fact high culture. Nowadays we think of high culture in terms of sartorial high culture to be Italian, French, or all these sorts of stuff. The sub-civilizations that make up Dar al-Islam actually contained very deep and ancient meanings in what they adorned themselves with. I wanted to give an example and wore my clothes in accordance to it. This is an example of a Sayyid, like a descendant of the Prophet, from the time of the Ottoman Empire. And so I appropriately wore a green cloth around my head as well to kind of hark that back. So colors of turbans itself was deeply meaningful in that time. For example, in Mamluk Cairo, the Abbasid throne, which after the Mongol invasion was being protected in Cairo by the Mamluks, wore black turbans because those were the colors of the black banners that the army from Khurasan, waved as they overthrew the Umayyad government. The Jews, I believe, of Cairo wore, I think, blue turbans, and the Christians wore yellow turbans. This is not some kind of like empty differentiating kind of enforced differentiation of the population of Cairo, but rather something that, just imagine Cairo with all these colors, all these, sarma, metal, weaved thread, and all these sorts of stuff, and the various colors of the different quarters, all mixed in Mu'izz Street, in Al Fustat, in Fayoum, in all these areas. It was a very colorful world. Most of the time when we watch historical movies, it's kind of presented to us as some sort of like dreary, brown, beige, this sorts of stuff. That's not true. The past was extremely colorful with natural dyes and all this kind of stuff, and I'm saying all these kinds of stuff too much. I will try to. That I want to argue is particularly lost on our current culture of these times because of factors outside of our control. But if we remember why it was taken away from us, there is an opportunity to kind of grant continuity to that world. The reason why I'm putting the slide here for turbans, elaborate, obvious, these huge Ottoman turbans, is because when it comes to, I'm going to test. Without the microphone, can you hear my voice? Online. Is there anyone online? Okay, dear. Yeah, if that would be better actually. This is very. My apologies. Yeah, I'm a hand mover. Like when I talk, like Doctor Strange. This is very limiting. The online folks are gonna have to miss out on this. The reason why we are no longer connected to a lot of the, no longer connected to our cultures, our headgear, outerwear, the various layers and layering that we would do just 100 years ago, really, is when it comes to the most influential states or dynasties or empires right about right towards the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s, was because of clothing reforms. Why is this important? When a state is in want to found itself on new principles, very oftentimes in history, what is changed first is the clothing. Okay, so in terms of modern Turkey, I hope some friends from Turkey are joining. In terms of modern Turkey, there's Ataturk's reforms. We like to usually kind of use him as a scapegoat, like blame him for everything. The changes that he did upon the dissolving of the Ottoman Empire and the founding of the Turkish Republic, secular republic. He at that time banned the fez, what Samih is wearing now, the tarbush in Arabic. He banned the wearing of this fez, and it kind of made everyone wear top hats, kind of look more European. So this was a state project, right? But this was not the beginning of like a sort of, you can't really just tear something from its grassroots and just throw it away. This was a very slow process that started during the Tanzimat reforms, where what was first attacked when it comes to our ability to be sustainable in such an everyday thing, but quite crucial thing such as clothes or attire, was economic. by several, and he's just holding there a rose. Floral patterns were a part of how we expressed our comfort in our sovereignty, how we had power in our own lands, okay? And it wasn't just floral, of course. There's geometric, there's the chintamani and all this sorts of stuff. These patterns, can you take out my notes? These modes of expression projected power. That and my argument is that our discomfort in really wearing these sorts of clothes exposes one main thing more than anything else. We're not in power. That's why we feel the need to wear a suit when we attend, like galas or whatnot. So to bring back this, I've been told to not go too much into the history because there's a lot of history to cover actually. So that's why I prepared this slide. But we can have these conversations later. I don't need to try to condense this all in a talk. The research that I've done on the matter when it comes to Kashmir, Srinagar in Kashmir, or like the silk makers in Kerala, or the khanats around in Central Asia, in Bukhara, in Ferghana Valley, the silk looms in Damascus, in Aleppo, the silk makers in Bursa in modern day Turkey is plentiful, but I can't fit them all in a talk. So I'll go by way of visual demonstration instead. And I'll summarize it towards the end. So this is, could you go to the previous slides, please? I think this is the next one. Previous slide, right after the one of the two men on the horse. We have forgotten these motifs and the symbolisms that was used for centuries. If you showed this to anyone from like 100 years ago, yes, please. If you showed that pattern, it's called the chintamani. It sounds weird in Malay, but it's called the chintamani. It's a Central Asian Mongol symbol that Amir Timur later on Islamized, let's say. And when I say Islamized, I don't mean it in a deep philosophical way. It's just he started to use it to legitimize himself, and so it started to be associated with Islam up to the point where the Ottomans took power, became a caliphate, and that was the motifs that they used to show power. What the sultans used to wear. They called it the tiger stripes and the three dots, like the orbs, the eyes. We don't have those. I mean, this is probably the first time you've seen that pattern, is it? The chintamani. Can I get a wireless mouse or something like that? Yeah, is it? Like, you've never seen this before, have you? This was very, very this was very much the symbol of power for a long time during the Persianate millennium. When I say Persianate millennium, I mean perhaps roughly around the time of the Seljuks, who were Persian-speaking, even though they were Turks, all the way to the fall of the Mughal Empire. This was the Persianate millennium, some scholars have called it. And especially after the Timurid period, this was power. You can Google paintings of Sultan Selim, the Grim. You can Google paintings of Sultan Sulaiman al-Qanuni, or even Mehmed the Conqueror, or even Amir Timur himself. They would be wearing this pattern because that projected power, sovereignty. This particular one is from the late 1400s, exactly the period that I am mentioning here, the beginning of the Timurid dynasty, and it's made in Bursa. So the patterns came from Central Asia, but it was being manufactured in Bursa, which until now, as our brother Abdul Hayy could tell you, is where they still make the best silk in Turkey. And also our brother Siddiq can tell you, because to my knowledge, he bought some for his wife when he got married. And the word used to describe this pattern is in Sanskrit. So this, when you read it, what it's supposed to arise in you is is seeing how interconnected the world is and how it went through, how globalized the world is, and how it went through a very particular idiom of interpreting and building and creating symbolisms by way of something like what we wear, to the point that it is interpreted through an Islamicate lens, and it's arrested into their own forms of meaning making, and we have lost it. That is the thing. Now most of these things, I took these from the Met Museum. These are photos from the Met Museum, and when you see these beautiful textiles and the velvets and all this kind of stuff, you would only be thinking about museums, as if you can't really have that in everyday life. That is a fallacy, I would argue, because me and Sameh, we've traveled the Muslim world in search of these kinds of people who can still make these things, and they're there. Not for all of them. Like the Bengali muslin, the Bengali muslin that is famed and also quite popular in Europe towards the end of like 1800s or something like that, was famed to be a fabric that was so light and so delicate that it was as if it was air. It was see-through. It was a kind of way of weaving silk that produced that result. Nobody can make it anymore. Guess why? Somebody knows. Colonialism. Yeah. Because this land at the time, the Bengal, the Indian subcontinent, was controlled by the British, who, were the spearheaders when it comes to the Industrial Revolution, wanted to create markets to sell to enrich the capital, but also to monopolize it. It's not, I'm speaking in abstract language, but it goes to quite physical lengths. The British simply destroyed the hands of the people who could work the loom. They could make their own sorts of textiles in their own lands, and then sold them back the stuff that they made in their factories, perhaps in London or even local ones. So this is an example where it's quite clear how agency, economic, aesthetic, and all these sorts of agencies that any person, any people, any region would have, was just taken away from you. It's not really a light topic. It's like I said, I've counted. I've used the word nexus like three times already, but it is a nexus point of to see who's in power. Okay, so that was a tangent. So next one. This is woven silk, also from the Ottoman period, from the mid-1600s, 17th century. And these, you've perhaps seen these patterns before. Maybe the ladies more than the men, because maybe these are used in like hijabs or something like that. This was a very popular pattern in the Ottoman palace, and its elite circles and whatnot. Next one. Also, it's not something you can make in a factory, can you? Next one. And these are fragments of a silk robe. Perhaps you've come across the word kaftan before. This is not the kaftan itself, but it's rather the like pieces of it, because it's a bit broken down. And this is not from 300 years ago is a long time ago, but I've arranged them so that it becomes closer to us. And this is not something from ancient times or something like that. It carries that dustiness look, and it's exhibited in a museum, and you think it's just this like inaccessible, distant glorious past that we can't access anymore. But kaftans were worn not just by people in the palace, but also just in particular this period. There was a rising, a rising, what do you call it, like merchant class that was wealthy enough to be able to partake in the luxurious fruits that the palaces of their respective regions would, lavish themselves with. So it became more democratized, let's say. The actual enjoyment of high quality, very, well thought of and sophisticated fabrics. And this particular one, my notes tell me, was used as gifts to dignitaries and all sorts of courtiers. Gift economy, I'm using academic language here, but try to see through the fact that when it's used as gifts by states, what do states use as gifts nowadays? Like, usually, yeah, there you go. Money and all this, and paper money at that, currency money. But you can see how not too long ago it was. Plainly put, it's a very human, beautiful piece of craft. This is a testament to not just Islamicate civilization, but to civilization, and that's why these things survived, because it was given as gifts. Because fabrics, the difficulty methodologically of studying fabrics and textiles in material culture is that they don't really last that long. When I say not that long, I don't mean like fast fashion clothes, but I mean like in terms of centuries wise. And usually the ones that survive in museums were given as gifts. So we get to look at those examples primarily. Next slide. And this is an interesting case, especially for the project me and Sameh are doing now, is because this looks like fabric, but you see those gold underlays and all this? That's metallic thread, in this case gold. And you would think that nobody knows how to do it anymore, right? But just a few decades ago, okay, guess what country? What? Okay, no. Who used to make the kiswa of the Kaaba? Yeah, Egypt, Cairo specifically, still has the craftsmen that can do this. And it wasn't just used for something like, something as, holy and central like the Kaaba, but it was also used for clothes, mainly for women. Obviously, we can't wear gold, but the craft survives, but it is being overlooked because we have been taught to think this is a matter of our distant glorious past. It is still there. Continuity. As a historian, I am primarily interested in continuities and discontinuities. So in the matter of our ability to make things, there's pockets all around the world where they still can. And I'm saying now, right? So this is from the Ottoman period, but this pattern that you saw in the previous one was very popular all the way back to Mamluk Egypt, which is like, to give you some dates, is like after the Mongol sack of Baghdad, which is 1260-ish, all the way to 1517, when Sultan Selim conquered Cairo. During that period already, in the 1200s all the way to the 1500s, that pattern went all the way from North Africa to China. You see, it was its own economic unit. It was a world system that interacted, exchanged, sent gifts to each other. You see the joy in that. It was an extremely colorful world. I can't show you too many images because we don't have that much time, but those sources are out there. Books, scans of lithographs of all this, or even old images, photographs from the early 20th century, from miniatures from the Mamluk and Abbasid period, just like the one I put in the poster, that's from the Mamluk period. It's from the Maqamat al-Hariri. You saw in the poster that the men were wearing these, cloud patterns, and like that world is still possible. You see, next one. And there's no reason that it's not here anymore, other than colonialism. This is an Antari robe from the 18th century. This is a women's clothing. You already saw that. But you see the extent of the beauty, and it's just indoor clothing. You see, there is something tactile and lived in and human about us adorning ourselves with things that we make. And it goes all the way to to domestic life. So this particular one, I actually collected these the charts, the tailoring kind of cuts and measurements for different pieces of clothing from the subcontinent, from the Levant, and all this. So in this case, it's open here. Maybe you've seen it in some movies. It's kind of open at the elbow, and so like these sides are like triangular pesh, like pieces of fabric sewn to each side, and so it has that kind of very elegant fall. And fashions change by the 18th century for this kind of clothing, and it dates back all the way before, I mean, long before that. The seam where you kind of fold the robe was made to kind of like reveal slightly the shalwar, the kind of baggy pants that was kept underneath, and the gumlek, which is the next image. The gumlek, and this is an undershirt. Okay, this is like alternating stripes of silk, weft, and also cotton. You see the amount of care that was put in our clothing before. We don't need those details. Next one. You know what? I want this to already be interactive. I've talked for too much. Let's start the discussion a little bit. Yes, please.
Sorry. In Malaysia, we still have movement by group as well.
Yes. Yes, yes.
So
Okay.
I just went to Bangkok for they still, sells
Mm-hmm.
some painters, silk and 100% gold and silver.
Mm-hmm.
We still have it.
Yes, yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
This is actually very unique for globally. It's quite unique in terms of Darul Islam. The only people who still comfortably make and enjoy and wear our own traditional clothing is Southeast Asia, the Indian subcontinent, West Africa. Those West Africans like Senegalese and Gambians who wear those huge regal kind of jubbas, let's say. And in the Indian subcontinent, that's a given. It's sorry, inside joke. And so it stands out. That's why I was saying that, like Sameh, where he's from, people have lost that. Like they consider it like, why are you wearing that? Like you look like an ice cream seller, kind of thing. Like the tarbush from a symbol of power, from a symbol of power and sovereignty. The tarbush was reduced to what the ice cream seller wears, or the butler in your Moroccan hotel. Those are, I am very sure those are intentional, those were intentional, like the fact that servants now wear the tarbush. Yeah, this is what the pashas, the bashawat, the aristocracy of the Ottoman period after the Tanzimat reforms used to wear in the Arab lands and beyond. And also Morocco, but that part of the world, they've lost it. Like they just, we are trying to. What? Why are you laughing? we are trying to show that a lot of the colorlessness of our lands now is very circumstantial, and we can, make steps to kind of bring it back, celebrate our. I don't like this line, but celebrate our heritage. It's not just heritage, it's continuity, it's sovereignty, it's aesthetics and whatnot. You had a question?
I think this one country which the Palestinians still have the skills to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Tatriz, yes. So shout out to the exhibition that's happening in the Islamic Arts Museum. They're doing an exhibition for Palestinian embroidery. And I like to use this example as well. Thank you, Brother Ismail, for bringing that up. I like to use the example of Palestinian Tatriz because when we talk about how the Palestinian women, do their embroidery and tell stories and, put their stories into the textile itself, you've probably heard of, I don't have an image, unfortunately. The Palestinian embroidery, it's usually red, right? It's red, like embroidered on black. Have you seen the examples where it suddenly becomes blue. Yeah. So in the culture in that area, when a woman's husband passes away, they grieve by changing the color to blue. So when by the time you like the grieving period finishes, it kind of like switches back to red, but it's contained. It's retained in the piece itself. We tell stories also by the way of the things that we make. Okay, and this is such an alien idea to us now because we usually just buy things. We don't make them. And when I say we, don't think of in like an individualistic kind of sense. It's not just the individual. It's not just the domestic household. It's villages. It's regions. It's interconnected ports and all these things. And for a country like Malaysia, it's not too hard to imagine because a lot of the maritime connections that we used to have, even in reflected by way of migration, is still here. You see, the batik, for example, has anyone been to Uzbekistan? Yeah, Irfan has been to Uzbekistan. Everyone. Oh. In Uzbekistan, the main textile that they used to make, especially in the 1800s for the Khanate periods of Bukhara, Ferghana, Samarkand, Khiva, and all this, is called ikat. And as Malays, when we travel out to, how we like to play that game where like, oh, that's a Malay word randomly, that's not a coincidence. Ikat is actually from the Malay. The word is actually taken from Malay. An alternative name for that fabric. Do I have an image? I do not. My brother is wearing that. That's my niece. The ikat is a very complicated fabric textile to make, and this is another example like the British and Bengali example that I gave. Ikat was made in Central Asia, modern-day Uzbekistan mainly. The craft was there for quite a number of centuries until the Soviet period, when it was directly attacked to the point that nobody really knows how to make it the original way anymore. If you go to Uzbekistan, you can buy ikat, but that's a reconstruction from the 90s. So it's not exactly how they used to be made. So only when you go to museums can you enjoy the pieces that were made in the 1800s. It's kind of a long story how they got to museums. I'm just going to give them in bullet point form. Soviet period in Uzbekistan, fleeing Uzbeks to Afghanistan, them selling those pieces to make some money because they're refugees, they had to run away from their homes and all this. Jumped to the 1970s during the great, I'm doing quotation marks, great hippie trail for all the way across like Afghanistan, Pakistan and all this, where hippies from America would be able to cross, just enjoy a borderless Silk Road, would come and collect these pieces, buy these pieces, and put them in collections. So even if you were to Google for images of this stuff, if you want to look at glossy paper books, picture books, they're all collections named after random Americans, basically. And that level of craft that we see in those pieces, they can't make anymore. You see, so like that's the ticking time clock when it comes to these things, because you just simply lose the craft. That's the thing about apprenticeships and craftsmanship. It can disappear. You see. You brought up, what did you bring up? Tatris. So yeah, I think that was the end of the point. Any other points of discussion that will be quite interesting?
Although it derived the name from
Malay.
but does it have resemblance to the ikat title like for Hubu in
No, because it's different. Yeah, I didn't get to explain the process of making ikat. My bad. Ikat, they use the Malay wood because of the method of making it. So the ikat, can everyone just Google on their phone to see? It's okay. No, bawah Yunus punya capan tu ikat ke? Bawah capan Yunus tu ikat ke? Never mind. My brother's wearing a piece from Uzbek. Never mind. It's okay. The ikat this is not the ikat. I didn't put the ikat. I'm sorry. The ikat is a very complicated. It's a method of dyeing the fabric. Okay, so I have a video of this, but again, it's like they first extract the silk from silkworms, local silkworms, and they tie it at various knots at different intervals, and they dip it in dye, natural dye, and then they untie it, and then they do it again at a different point, and then they dye it again, and all this these steps. But how do they avoid all of it from being dyed? Is that they put wax to avoid the dyeing process to happen at certain parts. That's why it has these bands, these flowing cloud-like patterns. It's because they put the wax. What does that sound like? That sounds like the batik method in the Malay world. And also, quite literally, they ikat the thing at intervals. The alternative, the Persian name of ikat in Central Asia is abr, which just means cloud, which is more pointing to the pattern instead of the process. You see? Yeah, that's why it's called ikat. Mm-hmm.
So a question. Why not in age where, for example, in Turkey, they just do like maybe monthly or yearly twice that they have a festival to wear something traditionally, like how we have in Malaysia, like you start to wear
Yes.
traditional wear
Yeah.
attire and go to the city, and
Yeah.
I guess kids, like like the people who wear right now we see
Yeah.
people
Yeah. That's one of the beautiful things that we managed to preserve really in our culture, even to the point of like civil servants having to wear the batik on Thursdays. But in Turkey, just like the Ataturk example I gave, it's not at all common for them to be wearing traditional clothes at all. Okay, so when we were living in Turkey, for example, during Eid, only the foreigners were wearing traditional clothes. The Turks would be wearing like suits and stuff. Of course, they put the small little touches. For example, they wear the suit and they hold the tasbih, these small touches. But you don't see the shalwar, you don't see the yelek, you don't see the turban, you don't see the sarma, which is the metallic embroidery thing. Those things are completely lost. Why? Mainly because of the trauma of the founding of the secular Republic of Turkey. This is an interesting point. So, turbans. Brother Siddiq is wearing a turban. Turbans we consider nowadays to be a religious item of clothing, no? Right? Like if you wear that, if in Malaysia you say like, oh, alim no, yeah, ustad, yeah, but that's very recent. The reason why we associate traditional clothes and traditional headgear to be religious is because when the clothing reforms done by the King of Afghanistan, Ataturk in Turkey, the Shah of Iran, when it was done, they put a clause that it would be allowed for the religious class. You see? So before, even people at the tavern would be wearing a turban. You see, so that's just 100 years ago. This kind of change. So there's nothing overtly, inherently religious about Siddiq wearing a turban. And headgear, particularly in terms of men's fashion, I'd like to give some time for men's fashion. I'm sorry, because changing men's fashion is more difficult to look at Irfan, for example. Headgear was one of the main things that was changed, let's say, because a lot of dignity is kept on the head, obviously, in a lot of Muslim cultures. And at least the Malays have the songko, which I don't know if you can put a date to the beginning of its usage. It's not that old. It's actually just a derivation of the tarbush, which the Johor Sultanate brought in because of their close relations with the Ottomans. But of course, we did some modifications. The fact that it's foldable, the fact that it's slightly oval. This is exactly round, may I? This is exactly round, a little bit different from the Malay songko, right? The Malay songko is more like oval, eye-shaped, and this is a traditionally made tarbush. It's not an ice cream seller prop. This was made in Cairo by machines from the Muhammad Ali Pasha dynasty period, so from the kingdom period of Egypt. And this is like straw, this is leather, and this is wool. The original one, the tassel used to be made of silk. But this one is not silk. That's the only inaccurate part of it, I guess. But it's made in the same shops where they still make the Azhari caps. We have an Azhari here. The red Azhari cap that perhaps you've seen. So the exchange, the songko is a great example of exchange and indigenous modification. Movements of styles that they later on carried other, that had an accretion of other, perhaps even oftentimes political meaning to it. Like, the tarbush case, it was always political. But now when you look at it, if you wear it in Turkey, for example, you're considered an Ottomanist. But if you were wearing it in the 1800s, you were considered a very progressive guy. I mean, you were all for the Tanzimat reforms, you wanted to, reform the military, you wanted to, all this stuff. And in the Malay world, for Indonesia, it's quite political, the songko. It's like, very dignified. States, Tanja as well. Oh, Tanja is a great example. Thank you. The Tanja, if you don't know what a Tanja is, just take out your Malaysian bill, and the figure there is wearing folded clothing. Is wearing a folded folded fabric on his head. All those folds, in Malay culture, there's an actual person in the palace whose main job is to do the folding, because they're very specific meanings that denote status, position in the hierarchy, and all this. And we don't know anything about that, do we? I mean, I'm not saying that we need to bring back these hierarchies, but in time. Why are you laughing? Yeah. Okay, I was about to make a joke, but but I'm not trying to bring back these hierarchies, but these meanings are just mainly relegated to your obligatory history classes in school, or the local museum, the local dusty museum that nobody goes to. I am emphasizing the point that by way of clothing, by way of the creation of the clothing, the patterns on the clothing, the motifs, the way you fold it, the way you wear it on your body, is fertile with meaning. Okay? Women know this. I don't know why I'm looking at this, but women know this. Men don't experiment with this anymore. I'd like to, I reached a kind of conclusion about, a kind of insight to why I think not just men, but yeah, everyone have lost the ability to layer and control silhouette, let's say. Like imagine the Tunisian or Moroccan man wearing the silham, the burnous, and you see that silhouette of the cloak, and you see the silhouette of the tarbush, and it's very jalali, right? Layering we've lost that. Even Brother Iqbal here is wearing a jalaba that used to, have also a silham over it, and then all these additions. Layering is gone. Guess why? It's because of material. If you wear multiple layers of polyester clothes, it's pretty hard. But if you wear multiple layers of cotton or wool, made in the proper way where it's airy, or even linen, this is linen, you don't feel the heat, and you can wear multiple layers. All these clothes, for example, this is an undershirt. Then you wear the metallic kaftan, metallic thread kaftan. Then you might even wear a cloak over it. And then the women, the upper class women of the Ottoman Empire would even wear a veil over it, you know? So layering is possible, but we've lost it because we've kind of adopted synthetic fabrics instead. So like natural fabrics are much more breathable. Yeah.
Onto that point, I'm a guy who started questioning material handling.
Yeah.
So when you talk about clothing showing power, because I think when you see men, they look for the figure. I have a perspective that I share because part of the clothing then that I do see people wearing was also virtue signaling.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was a lot of that power, the Muslim power, but there's a lot of virtue signaling. Nowadays, I see men, it's easier for us to virtue signal with starch.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Tease the car.
Yeah.
Like well, back then, people Western, simple Western, it's probably more thin, etc. So the only way to differentiate yourself in society is what you wore, how it was, the colors that you wore. Even in Japan, there was probably a color that you could not wear. It was purple, right? And probably a specific color there. But to your point, I think, do you see that this virtue signaling changing towards where we were?
Towards where?
To where we were in terms of clothing and etc. Because I believe, because I can't wear polyester now. You know, the composition of polyester nowadays, it's just, you know, it's not like how it used to. You know, but for me also, it just opened up my eyes. So probably my body is no longer adjusted to it. Maybe it was never meant to. Now I look into like this was made from hemp by a guy who found a family in Nepal. It's a small auntie that made it, so I supported it. It's no longer cheap to actually have and adorn this kind of stuff, right? So I think part of the shift that I do see is, economics, but is there, in terms of your research, do you see, like, I'm so sorry, that's my son, you know? So is there, do you see that there will be like a significant shift now that people are slowly getting aware, right? But I don't see it being any more economical down the line, you know? So, but I just wanted your opinion, or anyone else on the floor, where we headed towards that kind of virtue signaling, or that kind of how do we retain whatever we know now based on what we look at the past.
I'm gonna touch the point where you said about the shirt you're wearing, right, is made in Nepal. So in terms of, it's not just textiles, by the way, it's also food. You know, being able to get the right organic natural option is expensive, right? But remember the point I made in the beginning is that, yes, there was trade from all the way from China to the Malay world, or from and the Levant and all this, but people locally also made stuff. So the point that I'm trying to, my point is twofold. It's not just consumption; it's also manufacturing skill, the craft itself. Yes, there are people who still make songkit. Yes, there are still people who make batik, but not enough. It's not even considered a serious career option if you wanted to become a craftsman. And, you know, to support, let's say, policies that could cultivate that even more, it's quite easy. It's just, you know, now Malaysia specifically more concerned with like STEM fields, you know, the sciences and all this. But craft is a very dignified vocation. It's not just a career, it's a vocation. And to cultivate that locally is how you really make it stick. It's not just about getting a particular item of clothing that is sustainable or eco-friendly or something from another corner of the world. It's about just being very, you know, to the point perhaps even the market becomes saturated with this stuff, and you exchange. It becomes a creative exchange instead of a physical exchange. You know, that is what I'm imagining that would happen. But and the culture nowadays is more sensitive to these things. They enjoy these old, not old. They are placing more importance about the fact that what they wear is natural fiber. It was created ethically or whatnot. That's a great step towards that direction. But this has been taken as primarily an upper class concern, right? Like if you're living in the ghetto in Cairo, you wouldn't really care what you're wearing, right? But if you apply the logic of training craftsmen into that situation where the ghetto person in Cairo is just wearing whatever is imported and is cheap, if you train the locals to be able to do that, everyone is dignified with proper clothing. You know, and it has effects on health and all this, you know, like plastic, let's say undergarments, it's affecting all sorts of things in our generation of men now, for example. But it's localized training and consumption. It's twofold. It's to make it accessible. It's to make it. It's to make the expertise. To pass along. To create more apprentices to pass along the crafts from the masters, and it's regional. It's regional and localized kind of thing is what I would be imagining. I don't know if anyone else has an interesting comment on Daniel's comment. Yep.
So, of course, thank you so far for the amazing lecture. I wanted also to add one more example that maybe was a bit more unique for let's say, the Ummah's history when it comes to textiles, is the example of Saudi Arabia. So I lived in Saudi for maybe 12 years, and I was able to live in multiple different regions in the south, in the north. And one of the things that stood out to me was that in the south, especially, there was a lot more resistance among the local population to wearing what is known as the traditional thobe, right? So the Saudi thobe is very specific. If you wear your different types of thobes, it's a lot more tight than the average thobe. It has this very distinct long collar, and its origins is mainly in Central Arabia, right? So Najd and the modern capital of Riyadh. That's where the specific combination, you have the red shimar and the igal and the thobe. But the other regions, actually, they had their own traditional clothes, especially the south, the ones close to Yemen, the Hijaz, the north, the eastern coast. But what happened with the modern state is that in order to, let's say, create this national identity that's very unified, they enforced mainly through schools the wearing of this traditional white thobe. And it was in that school that I remember we had multiple students who refused to wear the red shimar, for example. We all had to wear the thobe, but there were many students, myself included, we would only wear like the hat, we wouldn't wear the shimar. And the principal would bring us in, be like, oh, you have to wear the shimar, and blah, blah, blah. And this is just from research online, is that there's only one tribe in the very southern border of Saudi Arabia that still don't wear the shimar, period. They're very, very independent. It's in the region of Asir. And they have a sub-tribe known as the Flower Men. Yes. I highly recommend anyone to search them if you haven't seen them before.
This, but you're already
yes,
going to the point,
but they're very famous because of how distinct they look. So they actually wear traditionally sort of a hat of flowers or a crown of flowers. Yeah. And to our eyes, we see them as you mentioned, like perhaps very feminine, not very manly. But they're actually the most independent in that region. They're known as the most violent tribes. A lot of people don't go inside. Saudi police are scared of visiting certain villages. And so what these things symbolize, and to your point, the whole point of sovereignty and it's something that really needs to be understood and restored.
Yeah. That's fine. We started late. You can just put it up. This is a very interesting example, the flower people of Yemen. And when you mention South Arabia, that's basically Yemen. I mean, North Yemen, Sana'a, Zabid, Taiz, and all these areas are there. The importance of the textiles and fabrics goes all the way to the time of the Prophet. Like there's a hadith where he it is described that he wears the Yemeni striped, what's it called? Habara. Yeah, Habriya, Sheikh. The striped fabric, right? The Yemeni striped garment, let's say. And if you really think about it, try to look at that hadith by way of its historical, like when it was uttered, what was the alternative to wearing a Yemeni habriya? What was high culture at the time in the 1600s? Byzantine, Eastern Roman, and Persian Sassanid, silks and all this, silks and gold and all this. So even the Prophet pointing out, I'm not trying to insert my argument into hadith, but I'm just saying there's parallels, mentioning the Yemeni pieces of clothing instead of what was available in Mecca and in Sham, where, as a child the Prophet ﷺ also went, which was an Eastern Roman province. These other externally made stuff and associated with the thrones of seats of power in Constantinople and Sassanid Persia, and then he brings it forward. He brings it back to like a local kind of identity, right? Yeah. The flower thing, I wanted to say something. It almost seems like the final stage of masculinity is floral, Like you can't skip to it. You have to be Mehmed the Conqueror before you can put a rose in your portrait, and you have to, be semi-separatist to the Saudi state before you can wear flowers on your head. Let's give some more examples, maybe. Yeah, interesting point. Yeah, okay. Thank you for coming. I apologize for the delay and the perhaps chaotic way I've been presenting, because even the slides not really, it's got nothing to do with what I'm saying, but it was kind of last minute. So let's continue this conversation, not just with me, with your friends and all this, because me and Samir, we started this cultural project we founded this company called Dar Dibaj. It is primarily a cultural project. We want to bring back the tastes and understandings of our local indigenous meanings. When I say local indigenous, I mean like, if you think identity-wise, it's connected. That's why I've spent so much time talking about the connectedness. It was a world unto itself, and where all these things were exchanged, patterns, textiles, and fabrics. Talk about it, be creative with it. If you're like, a fashion designer or something like that, make your own clothes. My sisters, when I was a kid, they make their own clothes for Hari Raya. They just buy the fabrics and then they make the stuff. And it's very beautiful. Okay, we will do, can we? Yeah. Well,
Inshallah. So before we're going to have inshallah, a last one.
Yes.
Qasida.
We will now have our brother Ismail to play his oud. He's a professional oud player, very excellent player. He's being humble. Before we end the night, inshallah. Do you want to move? Okay.
طالما أشكو غرامي يا نور الوجود، طالما أشكو غرامي يا نور الوجود، وأنادي يا تهامي يا
Inshallah, inshallah. Inshallah. I think. Jazakumullah khair. To not just to sorry, Samith, Samith, Ismail, and our brother, sorry, Ismail, Ibrahim, sorry, Ismail's there. Sorry, I just had a like such a out of word by listening to our brother playing the tarbush, which is what's it called? Oud. Gambus is another word. Yes. It's not easy, so call yourself as a lucky person, lucky people for you to hear this live. Usually you have to go to Cairo, sit down at the Khan Khalili in order for you to listen to this. But you hear, and it's amazing. May Allah bless all of you for your efforts and sincere in teaching, especially our brother Ismail, yes. I just had to. So, so many brother. So I had to inshallah. As we have to close this, because time is not giving us more, so we have to do our closing, which is we will have a quick photo, all of us. So I will ask kindly for our speakers to have a seat over there. Then we have our ladies just come forward, inshallah. Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, everybody as well. Yeah, I'll talk more afterwards, inshallah. Can I have this? We can just take this, eh?